What delay?
Yeah, so
Guess that one.
that delay. We're a group of normal people, all trying to figure out how to follow Jesus in the 21st century. Despite this thing that unites us, we all have very different views on church, religion, life, and faith. We want to invite you into our conversations so that you too can hear new perspectives, unique ideas, and see that it's okay to be honest about your faith. Welcome to our podcast.
All right, so I'm going to host this one then.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Well, folks.
Strong start.
It's a good start, Dan.
Strong. Really strong. So, I'm fascinated by the relationship between you two, because there's like the subtleties of like some real bromance. Like the making of a real strong bromance.
Yeah.
Like you're very different. You come from completely different places, but clearly there's some love. There's some deep love.
Deep.
And I want to find out a little bit more about that, and I want to understand particularly the journey you've been on with regards to the shifts in your thinking and how you've navigated that together, because many of us that are undergoing some changes in our theology, our faith, like how we do all of that, don't have those friendships. So like the opportunity to find people that may be of similar thinking, or at least open to some of the questions, would be good to hear how it's worked. So if you're up for that.
So where did you guys meet?
Yeah, was it an online thing? I was going to go with that next. What was your first date? What did you eat?
Yeah.
No, so you've been friends for a long time. You met in church. Did you get on to start with? Like, what were the conversations when you first got to know each other?
Well, how long have we known each other, Steve? I think we have talked about this before, and I can never remember the amount of years, but it's a while.
I think it's now 13 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Quite a
Gosh.
I
while.
was
That's
19 when... Yeah, 19 when I first got talking to
When you
you.
first laid eyes on me.
You know what me and Jen did? We got our anniversary tattooed on our bodies.
Yeah,
just so
I
it
was
helps.
thinking about that.
It's just an option, guys. If you need it.
Yeah.
Like,
How much would
we
Anna
carry
flip
the
out
date
if we
with
did
us.
that?
Yeah, I know.
We should do that as a prank to Anna.
Me and Steve decided
Yeah.
to get each other's names tattooed on our butt cheeks.
I don't think anything would surprise her anymore.
You should do that, but don't say anything. Just get into bed. Just see
Two.
if she notices.
Oh, me and Anna.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
No,
me and
Steve and Anna. Okay, so
Yeah.
JB, you were in a very different theological place. Like, you have, if you were to plot the 2 points of where you were then and where you are now, you were embedded in a church community. Now you're not. Steve, you were entering a community. Well, you were part of it. You were part of a,
Yeah, I mean, I think
a
embedded
youth.
is a strong word.
Well, you were.
I think
you were.
It's
Okay, fine.
fair to say. I think
You'd grown up
yeah,
in it.
I went
Like you were. Yeah.
regularly, if that's
Yeah,
what you want
okay.
to call it.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting you were leading it. I'm just saying you were part of it. Steve had come in, and now the end points, or where we are now, is that you are not part of that community, and Steve is leading it. So
Who knows?
it's quite a journey. Who saw that coming?
No,
That sounds so weird to me. I didn't.
no. Well,
None of you saw that coming. So can you plot some significant moments?
well, I guess
Jim?
mine and Steve's introduction to one another was I was already having arguments with people within the church, with my peer group at a church camp, actually. I think I sought after you for a hand in the argument that I was having at the particular moment. And I can't really remember if you were actually that helpful or not.
So you were looking for a wingman?
Who?
Yeah.
No, Jamie was looking for a wingman. Yeah, and there you were, Steve. Your eyes clapped across the room, and there you were, and the beginnings of a beautiful friendship. And how long had you been part? Go on.
Yeah, so although I was part of that church environment, I guess I was slightly rebellious within it. Not in terms of like behaviour or anything like that, but just I quite liked throwing a spanner in the works within our peer group of asking questions and being slightly heretical perhaps in their opinions.
Right.
And yeah, there's this one particular argument that I was having with someone, or a group of people actually. I think I felt like I was being ganged up on, so I grabbed Steve to try and help, and I think he disagreed with me. Something like that.
Steve, can you remember the interaction?
I can, actually, yeah.
Oh, great. Can you remember the subject?
Yep, it was about miracles.
Yeah, it was.
Go on.
I remember.
And healings. And I do remember agreeing somewhat with Jamie, and then he said something insane. Which was... And you know, he had seen this lady who, I'm sorry, I don't know if either of you still believe this actually happened, but the woman had a tumour in her head or something, and it popped out onto the floor.
I've never said anything like that. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard. No,
exactly. It was crazy.
I've never said anything
no,
like
Jamie,
that. No,
that's not what happened.
No, there is no chance I said that.
That's how I remember it. So,
yeah,
right. Okay.
Perhaps you having a tumour at the time.
Purely because I'm afraid that the conversation will never recover from such a ridiculous claim. Shall we fast forward to now? Like, you have the ability to look back on a friendship that has obviously navigated some quite significant shifts in your thinking. Can you, with the benefit of hindsight, identify one major area of contention that caused quite significant difficulty in your friendship, and how did you individually, first and foremost, so like identify it, and then JB first, then Steve, how did you from your own perspective handle that? So what was the issue, then how did you approach it?
Well, I don't think there was ever a specific... I mean, there's been lots of issues. I don't think there's ever really been like one main thing. It's been lots of different things. I think it started, at least my questions and things, I guess, started with I just really struggled with church, the way that church was done. I found that really hard to kind of engage with. I think, Steve, that was perhaps where a lot of our conversations were around before we got into theology. It was more around like why we do things the way we do. And as a teenager, as a teenager, I guess some of that stuff would be around like music and things, probably was where that started. So I am a bit of a musician.
So this is right at the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I'm a bit of a musician, and had led worship in various churches and stuff. And then going back to the church that Steve was at, I was interested in doing that type of thing, but at the time the church wasn't really up for anything beyond an organ.
I remember one of the things that really knocked me off was that I had been put in charge of Sunday school, and Anna was helping me as well.
That's my wife, by the way.
And we started really well. It was really good. And basically, the people who were involved are no longer there, so I'm kind of happy talking about it. Whereas I knew Jamie was kind of wanting to do more within the church at that point. And so he came out with me to just play the guitar with the Sunday school kids. I then got called up by one of the leaders, who told me that I needed to tell Jamie he could no longer come out to the Sunday school with me because he wasn't a member of the church.
And that's when my love of the church started. Carry on.
The irony in all of this was the organist was not a member of the church either.
Are you kidding?
I didn't know that. That's created a whole nother level of pain.
So what? This guy, and I'm assuming it's a guy, came to you and said, "I don't have the balls to handle this myself. As the young Sunday school teacher, I want you to fire this volunteer for bringing his gifts and talents to our young people."
Yep.
Good. Correct. Great. Okay, good.
Now,
welcome to church, everyone.
I don't remember if I had asked if that was okay or not with the leadership at the time. So I may have been not very wise in the way I went about it, but I can't actually remember if I did. It would be, I'm just going to be honest and just hope that no one who knows me hears this. If I know me, that would have been a very uncharacteristic move of me to do that without at least consulting one of the leaders first.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair to you, to the situation, Steve, I mean, you weren't suggesting, like, I don't know, like Bikini Fridays. You know, it wasn't like a
Yeah, I wasn't leading it by like belly dance.
Yeah, you know, it's a young lad coming to bring I'm assuming, acoustic guitar.
And I'm like, what, 3 years older than you?
Yeah.
Jim. So at the time, I would have been like 20, 19,
That's
20.
crazy.
Yeah.
Jamie would have been 17, 16.
Wee lad.
And who had been from, their family had been, your family,
Yeah.
had been to several different churches. It was like Jamie's starting to show a certain amount of interest and wants to serve. Let's cultivate that. So he came out and played guitar on a Sunday to Sunday school kids, like A, B, C, D. And
That was a song, by the way.
The real contradiction was
like Alphabet Street by Prince. That I can understand. That might have been an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, the real kind of this real stinger in it was that the organist who played at least every other week was not a member of the church.
Can I ask a question? Was there were there discussions going on about why there were no young people at your church?
Well,
I'm just going to put.
No, hang on. There was. There were.
I don't understand why we're losing all our young people.
No,
that's a real head scratcher. That one.
Those came 10 years later.
Right. Okay. So I'm getting the picture here. So you were put in a position where your leadership responsibilities impinged on your personal relationships, and Jim, for you, that must have been quite a serious knock for someone that wanted to get involved in church life. Was that the beginning of your disenfranchisement?
Well,
or,
I mean,
or disillusionment?
Here's
or was that just a wheel in the machine, a cog in the machine?
Here's the danger of this story.
Yeah.
People will do one of these things where they analyse my life and be like, "There you go, that's how it all started."
Yeah.
I don't think that had much to do with it, to be honest. With you.
It was just the final nail in the coffin.
I mean, to be honest,
That was years.
it was a long time ago, and it was a long time before.
Stupid.
Yeah, it was one of those really small things that. I mean, what was annoying is that I didn't really like the whole church thing anyway that much, and I thought, no, I'm going to make an effort and
That was the thing that annoyed me.
And it's like, I'm gonna try and really do something here to help and throw myself into this. And then so it was
It's like that scene at the end of a movie when someone's like hanging on by their fingernails, like on the edge of a cliff, and someone just stamps on their fingers.
Yeah. So it was less of like a deep hurt. I wasn't like upset about it. It was more just like, well, screw you. I tried.
And it would have meant him only coming out one Sunday a month.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal, was it?
So what was the issue? I mean, like, did they?
I can't go into the issue because there was something else behind it.
Jamie's sordid sexual past.
No. Well, this is I mean,
no DBS check.
No, that was the problem. There was a DBS check.
No, I mean, yeah. It, in one sense, it was just the shape of the church at the time, and there were so many factors that if I was in a leadership position then, like I am now, there would have just been so many things that you can identify just straight off the bat as to what was going on and why someone would do what they did. But even then, I've got criticism of how it was done.
Yeah.
I know that's so veiled and it makes not a lot of sense, but
no, that's fine.
I don't think it was the wisest thing to do. And
okay.
Not from my point of view, from the leadership point of view, they they handled a situation very differently to how we would handle it now.
Right. So there was some interesting church challenges. Jamie, you're now in a place where you're not regularly attending, but a established church community or faith community, but you're still really pursuing.
Did you mean? Sorry, you mean now, or do you mean in that time in the story?
Yeah, now. Now.
Okay.
So, but you are really investing time, energy, thinking, energy in theological matters. You're pursuing your own expression of faith. You're educating your kids. That throws up all sorts of questions, which then stands in some juxtaposition to Steve's position, who is still fully plugged in as a leader. How have you navigated that as mates? Because they're fundamentally different positions, and this is one of the challenges, isn't it? When you make a set of decisions, what you project to the world is this is your view of what you think is best. You can't avoid that. That's because you're making the best. You're trying to make a set of decisions or take a course of action that you perceive to be the best one. So how is that connected?
Yeah, can I clarify something first? That because Jamie then went to a different church for how long were you there for?
Oh goodness, 7-8 years. No, more than that even or something. Yeah.
Did they let you play guitar?
They let me do more than play guitar, Dan.
Oh,
It's like a whole new world. Carry on.
So yeah, that was that was that, and then I think really it's been in terms of my as you say, continuing as and even becoming one of the elders in a church that is very differently minded theologically than where Jamie would be at now has been the interesting
Yeah.
part of it all.
Okay. So what have been the significant areas of disagreement? I'm trying to find the juicy stuff.
Well,
the stuff that makes a marriage interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean the list is a long one, really.
But okay, there must have been a starting point, like where one of you were courageous in your shift, where you said, "I don't see it that way."
Well, I think
Where you were willing to step beyond the accepted agreement between two people.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bible was the starting point for me, and I think I was pretty open about that from the beginning, really. So, without giving too much away for other episodes, I got to a place where I was really unsure about lots of stuff, to the point of feeling pretty low and down. So throughout this whole process of leaving the church that Steve was at and going to the new one, and I got married and we had children,
With Anna.
obviously wasn't with anyone else, wasn't with Steve, was it?
But I'm just clarifying because that's what it sounded like.
And yeah, so I'd always had lots of questions, lots of doubts, and lots of being very unsure about lots of things. And it just got to a point where I would have a really great day with the kids, for example, and I'd go to bed at night and feel really low and down about the fact that I just wasn't sure that there was anything else to this life. And that would make me feel pretty terrible. And that lasted for quite a long time, until I kind of got to a place where I was like, right, I know what the Bible, I know that I've been told that the Bible has all the answers to these things, and I know what the Bible tells me, but that's not helping. So I obviously don't have a correct view of the Bible then. I obviously don't think it obviously doesn't have the authority over me as it should, because if it did, I would have all the answers to these things and it would be okay. But I'm not feeling like the answers are actually having an impact on me, so therefore I must have an incorrect view of the Bible, so let's investigate that.
Right.
So that's where I started. I decided to go on a bit of a exploration of what the Bible is, and I started from the kind of history of how the Bible was written, and that kind of started me on a longer journey of where it's led me to now. But that's where it started, was around just the I guess the purpose of the Bible. How
I
it's
think
written.
I remember this moment actually, because I think you rang me and you said, "I've started from the beginning."
I set a very specific.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on this. I think I set myself like a 2-year thing, which I never realised it was a bit
And
longer
you
than
were
that.
basically collecting questions.
Yeah, so I started with a list of questions of. Well, it wasn't a list of questions. It was like these are all the things I just don't get. Like throwing everything up in the air and starting again type thing. But yeah, it started with the kind of fundamental thought about the Bible, and that led to inerrancy and all that kind of stuff, which obviously then has a big impact on lots of other things. But that's where it kind of started, and I think I just told Steve straight up about that from the beginning.
What, that you were going on that journey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
How was that for you, Steve? Because I imagine being in a position where you'd done all that stuff in your, well, not all of it, but a large chunk of that in your journey into faith, to hear someone that had grown up in it now asking those questions, that must have been quite jarring. Or wasn't it? Was it just like, Jamie's going through some stuff?
Well, I think the reason I wanted him to carry on talking about where he had been at was because it wasn't like this weekend he's feeling like this. It was something that the conversation carried on returning to and had been for probably 10 years.
Right.
And
he goes on a bit, doesn't he?
Yeah. And so when we were kind of, I remember when he had decided, I just don't know. It was sort of, I felt he was at a crossroads of I've either got to just jack all this in, or work this out.
Right.
And at the time, I think for me, as someone who's always tried to encourage people to seek God, I was just like, seek God. I didn't know what was then.
Yeah. What was coming after?
What was coming. And at that point,
if he did, he wouldn't have said that.
I wouldn't have advised some of the stuff that he was going into. And in fact, I remember having a conversation about, he was asking, well, why do the liberals get called liberals, and why not read them? And I remember kind of being objective about that and kind of going, well, why would you? Blah, 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 blah. And so I think I was kind of more, I was on the one hand really pleased that my friend was now kind of going, right, I'm going to really think theology through and think about my faith and why do I believe this? What do I believe? Because there was one thing I just don't like, if I'm honest, and I've never liked it since I saw it when I became a Christian, which was just this nominal third generation Christianity. Yeah. I know I don't want to overstep.
No, but it kills communities of faith.
Yeah. And I was just like, for me, I think it was just, I was just like, I couldn't see the point in doing that. Yeah. Like just staying in something. Service. Yeah. So I was like, oh great, okay, cool. And then I was like, also apprehensive about, okay, now he's gonna kind of just throw everything out, and continue to be called a Christian but not actually believe anything. I think that's
how much of that was unsettling for you, because it might have raised questions for you, because obviously there was a friendship, and friendships, as far as I understand them, are a trusting connection, that you trust someone's judgment. I mean, you trust them enough that you're willing to build that relationship, and so for someone that you obviously had some respect for, to say, I'm coming to some very different conclusions from the conclusions I've held, and those conclusions impinge on the conclusions that you currently hold. So there's almost like a ping pong match going on, where there's, or to change metaphor, like a pendulum, as things play backwards and forwards, a kind of finding of a rhythm and a balance in between you guys, where JB's questioning must have focused your questions as well as maybe even challenged some of your answers.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, so there's been a whole load of people I began reading, mostly because Jamie was thinking things through. And it forced me in a way I think I probably hadn't been in a long time, to really kind of start thinking through, well, what do I believe, particularly around the atonement,
Right.
And I'm, you know, I feel I've got a much richer view of the atonement now than I did before. And there was things there that was that. I think there was a sense in which I'd fallen into this where Jamie would say there's this book, and I'd just instantly be like, that guy is just terrible, like you shouldn't read that person, or I've heard that about this person. And at that point I hadn't read them. I'd heard third hand that they were bad, and so that kind of challenged me to actually have a look at some of these guys, and there's, you know, there's still a bit of me that doesn't necessarily like going towards some people because I've got an idea of them in my head, but I will at least try to check out what they're saying to a degree.
Okay.
Before I certainly won't necessarily cast judgment on something they're saying if I don't look at it first.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of an interesting dynamic throughout this whole thing, and I guess on a recent episode, one of the bits of advice that you gave, Steve, was about if someone is thinking through some of these things, go find someone you can trust, and often that is going to be someone within their church environment. There is an interesting dynamic there, that the very things that you are having questions and rethinking is very much tied up with the person's role who you are perhaps talking to. So that's an interesting thing where, you know, so for example, now I've come to a place where I'm not really sure that the role of a pastor should be a paid thing in a kind of job in the way that it's traditionally done. Now, obviously, me and Steve are good friends, so that's not... we can work through some of those things where sometimes, you know, that could easily be an offence, or and I don't think your role is valid and all that kind of stuff. You know, some of the very things that I'm really against, you know, a good friend is still very much involved in. Yeah. So that's an interesting dynamic that perhaps people need to be prepared for when if they're going to be honest with one another.
How have you worked that through? Is it just, have you expressly said we're going to throw everything up in the air, or has it just been something that's been done bit by bit as you've navigated this stuff? Because I'm sure there are, as we've touched in other episodes, people that are wrestling through this stuff. And as you say, like within the structures of their church community, their family units, that the very things that they're trying to work out have an implication on the choices of people within those contexts. And so actually, where do they go to have that conversation? They can't go to the pastor because the thing they're questioning is the pastor. They can't go to so do you just have to work at relationships where you outline those parameters at the very beginning or in the conversation? How have you guys done that? Have you said very explicitly, we're just gonna hold everything really lightly and just work this out? Or has it been something that's just naturally unfolded?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, my advice would be to go to someone outside of your immediate church community, and then that's going to be completely different advice to what you guys would say, I'm sure. But that dynamic then is not a problem, where you can be, unless you can find someone within it that is you can be completely honest with. But it's funny. It's like I used to do one-to-one sessions with children around mental health and stuff, and sometimes the problem they had was with the teacher. And then sometimes the teacher would want to come into the room and sit with you, and you're like, no, this is never going to work. Like, you need someone totally removed from the situation. No, so we were fortunate in the sense that we were no longer going to the same church at that point. I don't know how that would have worked otherwise, but so yeah, I mean, I don't think that was so much of an issue because we were, not at the same place.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if we ever had I think we just, I don't know.
I don't think we've ever kind of laid out parameters of things.
It'd be quite a formal approach, wouldn't it? If it's like, listen, mate, we're going to have a conversation about our friendship, and here's what I expect from you.
Sign on the.
It'd be quite awkward, wouldn't it? Not sure this is what I signed up for.
I think you know the big thing for me was being okay with feeling uncomfortable at times, and actually I think you know, there were things that really annoyed me about Jamie's sort of his views, his new views, because I think I think I probably found harder than anything else. Like the theology side of things, I could have those discussions and I could leave them away on the table and go, I know other people don't agree with that and don't believe that. This isn't something new. I think when it started to become, okay, this is hard. I don't think I've even said this to Jamie, so I'm a little bit kind of.
Oh, here we go.
Was those kind of parts where it was like, okay, I used to be able to kind of talk about this thing that's going on in my work, but now I'm conscious that he doesn't even agree with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right.
So kind of I did at a time become quite hesitant to share anything. And then I was like, but hang on a minute, this is I'm sure Dan will resonate with this. This isn't just 9 to 5 for me. This is sometimes all consuming. And that it was kind of like, okay, is this friendship going to survive that at times, if I'm honest? I think Jamie had the same thoughts from some conversations we've had.
No, I didn't.
There was never any doubt in my mind. Well, that's really interesting. And I mean, let's be honest, there are a whole load of additional variables around this. Like you've already mentioned your vocation, Steve, your very particular journey into faith, the fact that Jamie's married with his own family, you're single. There's a whole load of things that your approach to life is necessarily different. And so actually it's not just the content of theological conversations that shape the friendship. There are other things at play there. I think it's brilliant just hearing the story, because I've obviously only ever heard bits and pieces. I think over the course of our podcasting, I'm sure truth will out around the very specifics about what kind of things you disagreed over. But it seems to me that actually the relational aspect is a bridge building exercise, that actually if you've done the work of demonstrating that you're for someone, that can withstand a pretty heavy load. And actually, as things move backwards and forwards between you, there's obviously a testing of that bridge, because we all know that there are moments in our relationships where we think this connection is not ready for this kind of weight. I can't even try to have this conversation because it won't, the relationship won't survive. So I think the fact that you've been able to navigate
you've got to choose
that.
Yeah,
go on.
You've got to choose the person that you have these chats with pretty carefully, I think. Because I'm really aware that there's some people that I wouldn't want to talk to purely because I don't want to destroy their faith as well.
Well,
Like
that's
some of the questions that I have that have had a profound impact on me, I know for some people that would just be way too much to even go near. And you've got to be careful of that as well.
and it can be a very isolating experience, actually.
Yeah.
Because you feel that, I mean, if you were to honestly investigate and interrogate the reality of these kind of inner thoughts, obviously you're not the first person that has ever thought these things. Everyone's been through them in different forms, or at least a vast quantities of people have been through these kind of crises. But they are isolating because you don't want to endanger someone's security. Like, you don't want to ask the question. By asking it, you put burden on the other person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that feeling of, if I surface this doubt, what will the impact be on that individual? And so it silences you. So I think that's why I asked the parameters question. Like, did you have a conscious conversation about these are the types of things that we're going to talk about? Finding your boundaries and your lines about what you can and cannot touch. Like,
Steve let me touch everything.
Great. So pleased to hear that.
That's untrue.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the follow-up, the question I wanted to ask then, and you just have, it's a kind of a yes or no thing, because if you go into it, then you're kind of into the territory where you're doing it. But are there things that you won't talk about together? Is there any subject so. There's a subject you think you could not go, you couldn't go there?
I don't think so.
No. I think there's an understanding in this game of very early on, and I think this is where Jamie actually was spot on, that he came to a different understanding of the Bible than I did, and than I have. And so there is an understanding, and there has been from very early on. There's some things that we're not going to the argument is nearly just it. Well, the argument is very difficult to have because we both have very different views about the Bible, and so I think we're conscious of that, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't talk about the subjects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I just remember that being part of a conversation very, very early on.
Yeah,
where it was kind of like we were going round and round and round, and it was like, it was just a case of actually neither of us could agree on a fundamental thing.
Yeah,
and that made the conversation very hard.
Yeah,
we weren't going to persuade the other.
No, and actually, I think one of the things that made a massive difference, and I think if there's people that are kind of having a similar kind of conversation with friends and stuff, is to make sure you understand what each other's going on about in your language.
Right, massively.
In terms of our church language, me and Steve are on pretty different ends of a spectrum in a way. Right. So like I'm not really down. I don't really know or I'm down with some of the church
lingo,
the jargon, church lingo. So some of the things I was trying to express, me and Steve were disagreeing on purely because of the language.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about the same thing, and it took us a while to realise that. And I remember Steve initially...
I'll just be like, no, you're wrong, Jamie. This is what this is. Blah, 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 blah. And going, yeah, but what I'm saying is... I'm just like...
Yeah.
Well, no, because you're not saying this right. Blah, blah, blah. And then it would finally, like 3 hours later, I'd go, I think we're talking about the same thing.
But do you think that actually a lot of our conversations are really... Like, if we invest time in conversation... then actually that's the general
Yeah.
That's the general situation, that actually most of our communication, most of our differences are actually issues of communication.
Yeah.
Like it's the old adage of message communicated, message received. It's like, if you're willing to put in the time and move beyond just two intersecting monologues, then actually we can agree on a lot more than we think we do.
Yep. I mean, I think that when I say, and I just really want to be clear on this, when I say 3 hours later,
Yeah.
I actually mean 3
Yeah.
hours later.
Yeah.
I'm not saying after the passing of some time that
Yeah.
felt like 3 hours. It was 3 hours minimum.
Yeah.
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 But the courage that's required to be able, and courage and tenacity that's required to be able to pursue something for that amount of time speaks
I mean, I think
of
we're both
the value.
we're both pretty obsessive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also I find this, that a lot of the conversations I have, you can tell when people just disengage. You know, it's like, actually this isn't valuable to this individual, and you think that you're not the conversation partner I need in this.
Well,
So you've got to find someone that's willing to do the 3 hours.
and not just time, like the person has got to be willing to actually change their mind. Like I would not have these conversations with people that I knew weren't bothered about actually learning something themselves.
So how do you ascertain that? How quickly can you read that in someone?
I don't know, but just me and Steve knew each other and we trusted each other. Like,
So all that stuff happened first.
yeah, like I think so. So there's like there's a mutually beneficial thing with this. Like, I mean, I hope that I haven't misread this for this whole last 10 years, Steve. But like, I don't think it was ever a case of me just offloading on Steve. And like him, like, oh, poor Jamie is just like deconstructed and he just wants to chew my ear off. Like, I wouldn't have engaged in that either, because that's not what I was in it for either. It was I don't know if I've got that wrong, Steve, but it feels like this has been a really mutually beneficial thing for both of us, for forcing each other to learn new things and forcing each other to reevaluate stuff, but also like, I think this, because of that removal from your immediate church community, there's things that Steve can offload on me, which he probably wouldn't be able to do with people within his own church as well.
Yeah.
Some frustrations and stuff that it's not easy for you to talk about to your own church. So, is that fair, Steve?
For sure. I mean, I think at the heart of it is that there was already a solid friendship there in the beginning, and so to kind of, where there's been a lot of mutual kind of sharing and offloading, and it was never like, oh, Jamie just needs to deconstruct again. Like, it was, sometimes it was exhausting, I'm not going to lie, but that was because I was being pushed into a different zone that wasn't comfortable for me. And I think I was coming to it from kind of going, there were times when I was actually looking at things for myself anyway, and kind of we were information sharing, and there was there were books I was reading, things I was getting hold of, and still to a point do now, where it's like, okay, I need to have a look at this and kind of hear another voice. And I still value, I think through all of it, I've valued that there's a different voice to listen to. So like even when I'm doing sermon prep now, for example, one thing I try to do always is get in a voice from my other books that I don't agree with, just so I can kind of go, okay, let's see what this fella's saying, what this person's saying. So I remember me and Jamie were sitting in a cafe a couple of years back, and I was preparing a sermon on Mary and Martha, and was looking at very traditional style of it, and Jamie sent me a link to some Christian feminist and her take on Mary and Martha. I didn't agree with it, but it was really interesting to read a totally different take that wasn't off the walls nonsense like most might assume if you're trying to engage with something that isn't in your tribe.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, guys. I think that the fact that you're willing to put in the time with one another, which it is costly. I don't think you can achieve that kind of reciprocity, the willingness to learn from one another without putting in incredible amounts of energy and emotion to it as well. Like there's a cost to it emotionally, because you walk away from a conversation where you don't agree. You feel well, I can't really put my finger on it, but there's something that at a gut level that's unsettling when you are not in agreement with someone you're in relationship with. Well, something that kind of upsets the equilibrium somewhat. And I think the fact that you're willing to pursue that to restore balance, even if that balance isn't agreement, it's still mutual respect and connection and friendship. I think there's something really honourable about that, and the fact that clearly you've pursued that together.
Well, can I just say one of the things I think it's important is to not make your relationship entirely about that as well. I think that's really important. I mean, I think we have been a bit guilty of that sometimes. Is let's get together, flipping it, we're going to talk about theology. And there's times, and so a time recently that springs to mind is we went out for breakfast and we hadn't seen each other for a while, and it was my fault entirely, but I had just got on some sort of band. I just read a book about Christian universalism.
There was also a big problem that we were both in a bad mood.
We were both in a not a great mood, and these things you're passionate about, so I was really passionate about this thing, and I was like, this is going to change your life, Steve. I really want you to believe this. And it took over our whole breakfast when we hadn't seen each other or caught up with each other, and I know that I got really irate and whatever. So there is a thing about just make sure that you're that this doesn't become just a discussion purely around stuff that is really heavy, or really just be friends as well.
But the thing is, right, so I think as well, when you do go to those places, it's actually really important, because Jamie's shouldering that for some reason, but I was just like, as soon as I saw him sort of pushing on stuff, I was already in the mood where I was like, no, I'm not playing this game today.
I'm gonna fight you on this.
I'm pushing back, and I'm not being nice about it. And afterwards, I'm sitting there thinking, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I wonder what all the people around us were thinking.
I know.
I mean, Jamie at one point was like, so those two women who are sitting behind us and definitely could hear every word, if you actually believe in hell, why don't you go and talk to them? And then I just fired off back at him, and I can't remember what I said, but it wasn't gracious either.
I would love to hear what the language, what's the worst thing you've called each other in these debates? Have you?
Has it got disrespectful?
Has it got personal?
Nah.
No, actually, I think no, I don't. I think
You've never sworn at each other.
oh, not at each other. We've definitely sworn around each other, but no, it's never got to a point where we called each other stuff.
We've never. I mean, that was the worst we've had.
Yeah,
I think.
apart from certain parts.
To do with theology, anyway.
Right.
There was a period of time I stopped talking to Jamie and he didn't know.
Yeah. That's another story.
Right. Okay.
That was very petty.
I mean, guys, that's fascinating. I've loved hearing this
hang on.
story. It's brilliant.
Hang on, chill out, Dan. He's got to say a bit more.
All right, I'm holding. Okay, I'll hold my horses.
The thing
Steve.
afterwards is that we went outside, and in my head, I was genuinely like, I haven't seen Jamie in ages. The only thing we're talking about is theology. We've had a big bust up, and I'm just like, I don't know if he's going to want to talk to me again anymore. And he just went. He kind of stopped me, and we do not do this. He was just like, I know we don't do this, but I think we need to hug. And we did. And even then I was like, I don't think Jamie's going to contact me anymore.
Right.
And I think either that day, or I think it was that day, he was like, let's meet up, watch a film.
Yeah.
And we did, which was kind of like, we're not going to do theology. I think we'd never had to say it, but both of us knew it.
Pause.
Yeah.
But we knew we needed to meet up and just re-establish friendliness again. Yeah. That was the worst I've ever thought it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
But also, I just want to say, sorry.
No, go on.
I think one other thing is I just want to talk to anyone who is kind of in my position of being more conservative in their theology, as a friend who is kicking against that and moving away from that. There is a thought that kind of comes through which says you can no longer be really friends with them, and there have been people who have kind of said to me, you know, in that sort of way. They've not said it that heavily, they've implied it, you know, and actually it's just not true that you can continue a friendship with them. They're not suddenly the devil. And even if they had gone off the rails in a far worse sense, sort of morally, for example, you'd still pursue them, and you can still be friends with them and pursue them and invest in that friendship.
Yeah. And the other way as well, like there is a danger of when you go against the really conservative stuff, there's a danger of you becoming even more fundamental, but just on the other end.
Yeah.
And you could then cut your own ties with all the people that you've left.
Dogmatic about it, yeah.
So you can become equally as fundamental if you're not careful. So it's important to... I think the nice thing about our friendship is I guess we kind of balance each other out pretty well. So like...
Yeah.
If I'm going crazy one way, like way too liberal or whatever, I kind of Steve brings me back in a little bit.
Yeah.
And I hope the opposite happens, and we kind of meet somewhere closer to the middle than we would have done if we weren't friends.
Jamie helps me not wear ties and blazers.
Yeah. I'm like, why are you frigging wearing that?
Because I have moments of crisis where I'm like, Jamie, I think I need to buy a suit. Why do you need to buy a suit, Steve, to preach in? Why? Because people expect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel I'm not smart enough.
Yeah.
This is great. I mean, this is really rich stuff. Like, just for so many people, the loneliness of having to plot a journey through the big questions of faith. I mean, it's so isolating, purely because of that tribalism. That if I don't get this right, then I'm out. So to find another voice, another relationship where you're able to thrash through that stuff, not even to arrive at consensus or agreement, but just to be able to voice it without feeling like you are anathema or the devil, I think is super important. I am gonna make a request at some point that we temporarily ban the words liberal and conservative, because I don't really believe that anyone is either. I think that the more I experience people's belief systems, is that we are a mix and a hybrid of all sorts of things. Like,
yeah, but it's useful language, though, isn't it?
It's
for us to know what we're talking about.
Useful, yeah. But I think even those terms need defining, because we may mean different things by them. But to have heard how you guys have navigated some of the relational stuff, as you've talked about some very big things in theology, I think it's without having done the specifics of what you discussed, just the relational stuff is very moving, and I'm sure there are people that will have listened to it and thought, yeah, I'd like some of that.
Yeah, and I guess I hope that is a helpful conversation for people to listen to. I'm also aware that there may be people who haven't got a friend,
mm-hmm.
who are actually now like even more disheartened.
Yeah.
So I don't know what our advice would be for those people. With any you guys, have you guys got any thoughts around that? Because like we said, it takes time, it takes effort, and you can't just do that with anybody.
For me, I still have hope in the church, because I do believe that the Spirit of God is doing something in and through this people who have with some level of awareness committed themselves to grace. Mm-hmm. And my hope and expectation is that on a one-to-one basis, there is enough grace to increase the possibility of this kind of friendship. It's not a guarantee. I mean, there's nothing. What is a guarantee in this life? I mean, you guys are not at the end of your story yet, so let's wait and see. But I do believe that you increase your chances significantly by being part of a community. It's no coincidence that you guys met one another in that context. Had your journey been consistently no faith community, Jim,
yeah,
you would not have met each other. You wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. So I hold out hope for the church. And if I was, this is kind of like a thought I might go away and think about. I wonder whether that's not far off what the church should actually be. Is a body of conversation partners that struggle through the mystery of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, if you find yourself a community where you can ask the questions and still be there next week.
And that may mean, now this might be controversial.
Oh.
And that may mean bailing on where you are.
Totally.
After some effort, obviously. Because unfortunately, it's all very well saying find someone within your church community, but we know from our personal experiences that isn't actually going to be the case for a lot of people, and that might mean
Jesus was cool with this.
Take a risk.
Jesus was like, go into a house. If there are people of peace there, great, chill, talk, get to know one another, do the kingdom stuff. If there's no one there, shake the dust from your feet and leave. So I think that's okay.
And just to clarify though, I don't mean at a whim. Just
Yes.
I'm just gonna go. Like I'll give up on you lot.
No.
I think you know.
Yeah.
When
And can I say as well, like from a point of view of an elder in the church, I found that the way Jamie left the church where he was at, he sought to do it in absolutely the best way possible in terms of having the conversations with the leaders and trying to really explain what was going on for him. And you know, I think that's really helpful to know that it wasn't just I'm not coming back next Sunday because I just really I've just decided I need a change. And my one thing would be just try and find someone or church community, if you haven't got that friend, as Dan said, to be there to build on. But yeah, it totally takes time, and I think, Dan, you're right, me and Jamie did become friends through the church, through meeting at church, and though we're like friends, very close friends now, I think we've talked about it in the past, we are so different. I don't think we would have been friends at school.
No, probably not.
And so like it's really it has been through time and
and I suppose landing this plane is that in your relationship you have symbolically by the hug after the most dramatic moment of contention in your relationship, love has been
don't start saying the L word.
Oh yeah, I'm throwing it out there, mate.
No.
It's out there now. The way that you've looked after your relationship and cared for one another demonstrates the very fact that your kind of agreement with a certain set of fundamental ideas is actually secondary to your behaviour. Like, it doesn't matter if you disagree cognitively. Like, these statements of faith or belief, connecting to previous episodes that we've done, it's like those things sit secondary to the way you behave with one another. And I think that's something that, as evangelicals or ex-evangelicals, depending where we are on that spectrum, I've just thrown a whole load of terminology in there, but depending where we are, that's one of the things that is most challenging, I think, because we have played the whole you have to agree with this certain set of ideals for us to be friends. I think that is one of the things that we struggle with most. That's the kind of boundary line for our tribes versus the fruit of our conduct. And the fruit of your conduct together has been, you can disagree, but you'll still hug it out afterwards.
And that's where the good stuff's found, isn't it? Like the good stuff's found in the conversation, not in the answer. So like, what richness are people missing out on if they're not willing to engage in that? And as you know, church leaders and stuff that are listening, like, embrace that. That's like a great thing. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So books, I get to ask you guys.
Oh,
So all resources. Obviously, this has been much more about your relationship, but I'm sure there's been material that you've read that's made you think about how you relate to those that disagree with you. Steve, do you want to go first?
Oh, no.
You've got your head in your part. You've got your face in your face palming.
For me, the flavour thesaurus was really beneficial.
Thesaurus. Okay, do you want to just give us the blurb?
Pairings, recipes, and ideas for the creative cook.
Great. Okay. Great. It's the first time I've hosted, man. I don't like you're messing it up.
No, I haven't got any resources. I'm sorry.
Can I have a serious contribution?
I've got nothing. Nothing about this anyway.
No.
Literally, like there's nothing I've seen. To be fair, I've not looked. There's nothing I've seen on this.
All right, then.
Yeah, let's skip the books.
Well, okay, I'm gonna have to throw one in then because people are expecting it now. We've set a tradition.
No, let's mix it up. We don't want to set traditions in this place.
Oh well, I had a really good one.
Okay.
Okay, given the beautiful story that we've heard about this wonderful bromance, I was drawn once again to that trilogy,
Lord of the Rings,
from J.R. Tolkien.
I'm Frodo.
I can't carry the burden for you, but I can carry you. No, I mean, although that is a good suggestion, I was actually thinking about the conversational material in Brian McLaren's series. The series starts with the book A New Kind of Christian.
A New Kind of Christian, yeah.
And it includes the story we find ourselves in, and then the final book is The Last Word and the word after that. There are 3 books. It's a fictional narrative between 2 blokes working their way through some of the faith issues that I'm sure we'll cover in this podcast, and it was profound for me, and I'm sure it will be helpful for other people. Well, there you go. That's my first attempt at hosting. How did I do?
You've done really well.
Okay.
Right, go on then, Dan. Say goodbye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've landed this plane. Thank you for journeying with Another Christian Podcast Airlines. We look forward to seeing you again next week as we take off into the stratosphere of theology, faith, life, and everything else.
That was brilliant.
Amen.
Amen.